money for votes, caste, region, etc. I understand the thought. I have no romantic notions about democracy at any level. I am a great supporter of democracy, but not with romantic notions. There is a way of responsible democratic institutions being created. The first is we have to realize that local institutions are schools for democracy. If you take the United States, Professor Burke was talking about diaspora. The strength of the country is that they built institutions in a manner that over a period of time people realize that their own self-interest collectively is far more important than their petty basic classes. And that's how to decide. Because what happens when you decentralize responsibly is there will be a synchronicity between vote and public good. Today my vote is different, my public good is different. Therefore I vote today out of passion, money, whatever. From tomorrow I start shouting from rooftops against them. This is a typical pattern at every level. The second is authority and accountability will be fused. That's how you have to design. But most of all, public money. The reason why all these freebies have become necessary in the country is people see that nothing is happening anyway, therefore let me get something. But supposing people actually say this is my money and this money has so many uses, what is the best use for this money? And I am sure that it will actually happen if I decide so. Then the way you approach the problem is altogether different. You are not allowing the people to approach the problem that way, whether it's free power or free rice or 100 other things. Instead of giving actual power and quality education, quality healthcare, infrastructure, so on and so forth. This dichotomy is essentially because the tax money is not seen as their money and they don't see anything happening because of that. So how to design the institutions is a challenge. Trust me, I gave some examples. Wherever some significant outcome has come, it is because of the horizontal or vertical decentralization and responsible and accountable manner. Having said all these things, given Indian conditions today, there will be ubiquitous corruption, I have no doubt about that. Because there are panchayats in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh where at village panchayat level they are spending sometimes 1 crore rupees or more. There is a case of 5 crores, which is a record everywhere in India, of I think Nadikudi, that panchayat, they spent 5 crores some 7-8 years ago. So I have no doubt, and Telugu people have mastered the art of this wood buying and things like that. Therefore, we have also a strong ombudsman system, very powerful ombudsman system to sack, to fine, to remove from the new elected jobs, all kinds of things, but due process in a non-partisan manner. So I'm not saying just hand it over and then sleep. I'm saying do the rest. That's why design is very important. Education, I will make a brief comment. The RTE has been a disaster, and one of the main disasters is that there is no measurement of outcomes. In fact, in the whole law, there is not even one word about educational outcomes. It's all about enrollment, as if that's the problem, as if the poor of India don't want to enroll their children. Indian poor are paying disproportionately out of pocket. The rickshaw puller is paying 1,000 rupees per month to get, in the hope that there will be some education for the child in private schools. After RT is enacted, I'm sure you are familiar, the public sector enrollment has come down by 10% in the past 5 years alone. And the law is entirely for enrollment and infrastructure for that. Public sector enrollment actually has come down by more than 1 crore by 10%. Private sector enrollment has actually gone up by 40% in these 5 years. Now, private is also not much better in most cases. And one of the key reasons, it's not the only one of the key issues is measurement of outcomes. That means evaluation. Instead of designing a sensible examination system, RTE said, no examination, no detention. Rubbish. Obviously, you cannot detain at lower levels every class-wise, but you can certainly have 3 phases, up to 3rd grade, let us say, basic literacy, numeracy. Then 5th grade, a little more. 8th grade, when you finish elementary education. If you have 3 stages and insist on certain outcomes and design evaluation mechanisms for that, it will be one of the important outcomes. And we are right now looking at RTE amendments. A team has actually finalized the consensus across the country. We are going to aggressively pursue them at the national level and in Telangana state itself. Because at the state level, we can actually enact this. And Article 254 we can go to President for assent. I'm sure the government of India will give assent to whom the state is desirous. We can do that, and we are working on those things.
Yeah. One of the points mentioned is about skill development by Professor Nasmanadi. Korea has made a very successful kind of practice, evolved a practice where they consciously brought down the enrollment of students in universities and drove them through a conscious policy decision into skill development programs, vocational education, etc. They found that at a point of time they cannot handle the increased enrollment in the universities and they brought it down. I think there is some attempt being made in Government of India now towards the vocational development, skill development, etc. by a very conscious policy prescription. The second thing is now any institutional development should also aim, as has been emphasized, at building in excellence. Today, in the public institutions, there is no attempt at recognizing excellence among the teachers. Now, in China, the performance of the teacher is measured in terms of the number of students who have been enabled to pass rather than the number of persons who got the grades. The question is, of course, in Korea and in China, the learning processes take place right at the age of 2 or 3. I mean, this should also be, we should be prepared to accept this kind of a discipline and see that the learning processes take place. That's how I think in Shanghai it has the best of performing schools in the world. So these are some of the prices this is some of the prices we have to pay if you have to build in excellence and also increase the overall level of performance.
You want to say something?
Maybe what I wanted to say, maybe I will continue with it. My suggestion has been to see that there is an NRI department in the state. Center is proactive today. It has been trying to reach out the diaspora, and I think all of you must have witnessed the Medicine Square get-together, not only there, in Australia and many places. There is an enthusiasm on the part of the diaspora, and the state should not be left behind in terms of linking back, to connect back with them. So therefore, both the Telangana Development Forum as well as the government, CII could insist or persuade the government to have a department of NRI connectivity so that there is a single window dispensation to deal with all the projects and connectivity, whatever the diaspora can think of doing. Specifically, I see a lot of philanthropic supports could be available rather than investments of remittances and so on. So this is a small solution which can be carried over. Thank you very much.
I've been given these warnings that you're going to have to eat your lunch and come back by 2 o'clock. At the same time, they say, please summarize quickly what we have learned.